Hi everybody, thanks for joining me again. Thanks for torturing yourself again by listening to my videos. So today we're talking about Song of Solomon, chapter 6, and you can download our PDF on our website for free if you would like it. Let's talk about our author, which of course is Solomon. Let's talk about our key characters, which aren't going to change. We have the young man, Solomon. He's also referred to as the beloved, which we've seen several times. We have the young woman, the bride. In this chapter, she's going to be called by a title that we haven't heard before, the Shulamite. That'll show up at the end of the chapter. And then we have the daughters of Jerusalem, again, who interject their comments here and there. In our definition section, I do have that term shulamite. It appears in verse 13. So this is once again a title for Solomon's bride. It only appears in this chapter, and it could refer to a person who is from the city of Shunem. That's possible. But those who are familiar with the original language, which in this case would be Hebrew, they suggest, some of them, that this is actually a feminine form of the name Solomon, which would indicate her closeness and special unity with the king. We're also going to talk about Tirzah. Now, Tirzah is not a thing. Well, it is a thing. It's a city. Tirzah was an ancient Canaanite city which was absorbed into the nation of Israel when they conquered the land. It was a really prominent city, must have been a city of some beauty. At one point, it was actually the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel. Let's now break down the text of this chapter and break it down into sections so we can understand what's going on here. The first section today out of the three is going to be just the first verse. And I once again, just as with yesterday, I don't understand why this first verse isn't in the last chapter. This isn't the way that the last chapter concludes. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but it really seems like it belongs in the last chapter. So looking for the beloved. The first verse is the conclusion to the search in chapter 5. Remember, she has this dream. She goes to the door. Her lover has vanished. She can't find him. She searches the street, still can't find him. This is a source of anxiety for her. So this is the conclusion to that. The daughters of Jerusalem agree to help the young woman look for her beloved. Now, I should mention that some people think that the next section of this chapter is kind of the resolution to that dream, to what we talked about in the last chapter. I'm not really so sure. I kind of think that this is just a new section altogether, not necessarily immediately chronological. So section number 2, verses 2 through 12, the lovers are back in the garden. Verse 2 appears to start a new section. The anxiety of the woman's dream is now past. She's back with her lover, enjoying the pleasures of intimacy, which is described to us once again in poetic language, in this garden language. She says this, quote, "My beloved has gone down to his garden, to the beds of spices, to graze in the gardens and to gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine." The enjoyment of one another prompts the young man to once again launch into a description of his beautiful bride. He compliments her by comparing her to impressive cities like Tirzah, which we talked about, and Jerusalem. He said that she was as impressive as an army with its banners fluttering in the wind. And he compliments her hair and her teeth and her cheeks once again with similar language to what we saw in chapter 4. He says if there were 60 queens and 80 concubines and innumerable maidens, Solomon said that his bride would be admired by them all. In verse 11, the young woman says that she is going to the nut orchard, and she's going to see the valley's blossoms and to check if the vines and the pomegranates had budded. Now, whether this was a literal orchard, it's not quite clear, but the symbolism of the springtime really seems to be kind of the main point, and we're going to see real similar language to this also tomorrow in chapter 7. So it's springtime, and we've seen this before. The plants were flowering, and so her desire and love for her beloved was also flowering and in bloom. Her desire was fixed, she says, on a prince in a chariot. And perhaps she was, watching Solomon from afar as he was riding in a chariot with his men or going to and from the city or something like that. Okay, now our final section, verses 13, just one verse again. The daughters of Jerusalem ask the young woman to return. The first line of verse 13 appears to be spoken by these daughters of Jerusalem, and they say this, "Return, return, O Shulamite. Return, return, that we may look upon you." Now, their motivation for wanting to see her is not exactly clear. Maybe it was that she was beautiful and they wanted to admire her. The interpretation of this is somewhat challenging because also the last line of verse 13, it's debated who actually says it. Some people think that it was spoken by the young woman. Other people think that it was spoken by Solomon. If it was spoken by the young bride, it maybe shows her humility as she's perplexed as to why she would be the object of anyone's attention. If it's spoken by Solomon, maybe he is questioning the motives of the daughters of Jerusalem, their intentions. Why did they want to stare at his bride as if she were some kind of spectacle to be gawked at, as he said, like a dance between two armies? So there you have it. That is Song of Solomon, chapter 6. Now let's talk about our application. I thought it was a pretty unique compliment to compare a woman to a great city. But when you think about that compliment, it actually makes a lot of sense when you think about the way that the Bible describes a godly woman. A great city is, of course, beautiful, externally beautiful from its architecture to maybe its geographic setting. But beautiful cities don't rise out of nothing. Behind them is an economy, the resourcefulness of the hardworking people who make them great. There is an individual industriousness to its citizens that gives it its identity and its charm and its culture and unique beauty. And is that not also true of a great woman? A woman may be beautiful, and that is a great gift and certainly to be admired in its own way, but an exquisite woman is a woman of great beauty and great resourcefulness. And we know that this was true of Solomon's bride, and maybe this is why he pulls out his city compliments, because we know that she told us in chapter 1 that she had kept the vineyards of her relatives before she ever became queen. And we know that Solomon appreciated this, and he enshrined the value of feminine resourcefulness in Proverbs 31, probably the most famous chapter about the godly woman. He says this about this kind of woman: "Many women have done excellently, but you, the resourceful and godly woman, surpass them all." So that's something to think about. Maybe on a little bit more practical level, if you're a young man and you're looking for a wife, yes, I know beauty is going to matter to you, but also look under the surface. As people always preach, Solomon knew it. He knew that there was more to external beauty. Look for that woman who's industrious. If you are a young woman trying to attract a husband, I know our culture and society puts a lot of emphasis on physical beauty and attractiveness, but any young man with a brain is going to be more attracted to a woman who is beautiful and resourceful, and he's going to appreciate that. So if you want a dudhead guy, just focus on the physical beauty. If you want a man with a actual, at least some sense, develop both a physical attractiveness, work on that, and also a internal attractiveness and resourcefulness. If you're a married woman and you perhaps don't feel you're that resourceful, that's something you can cultivate and grow, and your husband will appreciate it and he'll love you for it. If you're a man and your wife is resourceful, thank her for that. Notice it in her, not just when she puts on her makeup, but when she does, these things that display this talent and capability in her. Compliment her for that and appreciate it, because your life would be a lot harder if she wasn't that way. That's all I have for today. We've got 2 more chapters to cover, and then we're finished up with Song of Solomon. So join us tomorrow for chapter 7.